The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
I did hear that they were coming through necessary media.
Because it's necessary. Necessary media. Media, because it's necessary.
Yes, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back again. I'm your host and friend, Michael DeOliveira, ushering in the necessary era every Wednesday here live on Comcast Channel 95. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe here. I'm going to try to put this subscription annotation right there for you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, last week I had a couple things going on, but I'm back. We're going to be back next week. I got a big show planned for next week. I'm going to tell you about that a little bit toward the end of the show, maybe in the middle of it if it comes up in the topic. We got a lot of things going on, and to get that kicked off right away, because hopefully, another thing I want to let you know, everybody out there, I've been advertising the show today on Facebook. I do have one main reason that went through, and that's here right now. But there's something else I was pushing out at the end of the day. Right now, what I'm hoping is I have my interns in the back working on this. Jake and Kelly are on that, and I'm hoping they can pull this off. We're having a little bit of a technical issue. Oh, I'm getting the thumbs up. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank God, because I really put effort into this. So I'm happy about that, as you can see, I'm not hiding it. So what that's going to be, I did advertise about the no-flex zone for this tonight. That is going to be, to me at least, very serious. I was working on it right before I came in here, and I couldn't even contain the anger level going on. So later on, around the last 7 minutes, we're going to get into that. So because of that, and I need 7 minutes for that, we're going to get this show going right away. And I want to introduce my guest, ladies and gentlemen. We have City Councilor Cliff Ponte in the building. If I can get the camera to pan out. Hey, Cliff, how you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Listen, I've told people before, the way this show goes, I mean, I got my interns, they do a great job, and he did pull one off. I had Jake pull that off. Kelly dropped the ball, I think, but yeah, so everything's okay there. So yeah, I'm glad we got you in here. I've been trying to negotiate this for a while.
You have. It hasn't been a lack of an effort on your part, that's for sure.
But you know what happens when we do pull off something like this? You know what I think? I think it's
necessary to clap.
Does that ring a bell?
Wow.
Does it?
It's necessary to clap.
Wow, is that me?
Was it?
Sounds
it
like
might
me.
be. It might
Wow.
be. Cliff, if you
impressive.
again, I've asked Cliff if he's seen the show. Now, obviously, Cliff's a busy man. He's got a lot of things going on. City councils in general have a lot of things going on. I get it. But Cliff, you've had at least 2 appearances on this show without being here physically. You haven't been a No Flex Zone Award winner, but you've actually facilitated it at one of the council meetings.
Really?
I don't know if you're aware of how many times you mentioned necessary during a city council meeting, but it's outstanding.
Really?
I consider
I'll
it.
pay better attention to that then.
Well, please do, but just don't stop it. I appreciate it. To me, I look at it as free publicity.
Yeah, that's
I'm trying
no
to
problem.
spin it as much as I can.
That's no problem.
So, yeah, you have been on in that capacity. And last week, actually, I think we had a counter where in about a 4-minute span, I believe you had mentioned the word either necessary or necessarily like 9 times.
Really?
Yes. Outstanding. I was just like, he's looking forward to being here. This was when we already had it negotiated for you to be here last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to pay attention to my words then.
Well,
That's
no,
good.
because it's a good thing. You are. I thought you were paying attention, and you were just really hyped about getting in.
I
here.
am. I'm here.
That's what,
I'm happy to be here.
All right, so Cliff, I've had you on when I had the radio show. We were talking about that a little earlier.
Yeah.
I did have you on when you were running for city councilor, and did have you on the show. Outstanding performance, I would say. I'll give you that. I told everybody. Now, you had at the time. I think you've grown more fans over time than haters now. But you did have a crowd back then, and I used to be one of the people saying, "Listen, this guy's coming to play ball. He's playing ball. He's legit in it. He's in it to win it." And I feel like that's exactly how you rode that. You were the first one in line, right, for the paperwork. Mm-hmm. First one, I believe, because of that, you had there's a couple firsts, and you're pushing through. So You've taken that, I'd say at least, and I'm not also going to preface this by saying that this is no way near fanboy stuff, because if I do have a critic, whoa, Jake and Kelly, whoa, I'm back, all right. So I do have a criticism later, so just so everybody out there knows, this isn't Mike just going all friendship back in like the Mortal Kombat days. But so Cliff, with that, I think you've carried this energy over into your actual city council tenure so far. How has it played out for you? Now that you're actually in the game, you're on the field, what is the reality compared to what it felt like getting into it for the first time?
Well, of course, when you run for the first time, you have this approach that you want to work as hard as you can to try to get your message across. There's no doubt about the fact that when you're running for office, especially as a first-time candidate, your point is to get your message across, and also to try to get name recognition. So, like you mentioned, when I was running, I was the first to pull my papers. I really wanted to get the logistics out of the way, and focus on meeting as many people as I can. And I campaigned on allowing people to give me the opportunity. That's all I asked for. I asked for, give me an opportunity to represent them to the best of my abilities.
That was your main point, I believe. I think I remember that.
Yeah, we did a lot of advertising on the radio and in the paper. We did a lot of door knocking, and we sent out mailers and everything. But everybody I spoke to who was either saying, yes, I'm going to give you a chance, or no, I'm not going to give you a chance, I just asked them to just give me a chance. And now that it's kind of all made it a reality, being on the city council, it's a lot more challenging, I feel.
Can you emphasize where that challenge lies?
When I say challenging, it's challenging to try. See, my whole life in the business that I do in personal life, I've always tried to be a person who tries to please everybody. One of the realities that I've determined is I can't please everybody being a city councilor.
Okay,
but
that's hit you.
It's hit me. You know, it has, and it wears on me because I am really working hard. I am really working hard to ask the tough questions, be consistent. No desire to ever be an obstructionist on the city council, whether I agree with the administration or not. That's not what I was elected to do. So there's a fine line, but the challenging aspect is trying to do what's best, but not upset people, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Okay. Well.
And of course, you can't win all battles.
Right. Well, there's just too many people out there. You can't, like you said. But to kind of segue off of what you just said about the not trying to be an obstructionist, but just proposing certain issues or questions. I want to get into a couple, but I guess one of the most recent ones is the position that you put forth about possibly needing the city council needing its own council. City council needing its own council. So we have currently the corporate council. We have Judge Joe Macy. And this was talk that came up before. So for everybody out there, Cliff, I don't know, I've mentioned this before. The audience I try to reach is the people who might not be too heavy into this.
Sure.
To try to bring in some more people. So I try to keep it a little lighthearted. That's why how we do this here. To try to keep it a little lighthearted and entertaining to get the people who might not be into the dry end of it, because there is a lot of dry end to this. There's a lot of just tedious stuff. So again, so if people might not understand, the city itself has its own lawyer that's supposed to, in fact, represent the whole city. But what you haven't called into question, but what has been called into question, and you did push it forward, I believe, is the last city council meeting. Was it the last one or the one before that?
It was the last one.
Okay. So you had put forth the idea that the current way we have this set up with the lawyer for the city is he's contracted by or through the mayor. The mayor actually initiates the contract. So in essence, if you put yourself out there at home in that predicament, that's the guy writing your approval to get a check. You're being hired by this man. So the thought is that it creates a conflict of interest. So if you could briefly, what's your stance on that before, and then what maybe has changed or you taken in after that actual meeting? Because I feel like a couple things might have been brought up in there, and I don't think you changed your stance, but I feel like it kind of got maybe a little less aggressive with it.
Well, the approach is that, all my colleagues, I respect their opinion. I also always got to remember, being a new councilor, that there's been councilors who currently sit in those seats who have been doing it a long time, who might have a little bit more experience than I do, maybe have fought these battles as well in the past. But my position on having a corporation counsel represent the city council, or an attorney represent the city council, is strictly with the fact that the city council should be equipped with enough opinions in order to make a decision. Now, the Corporation Council, no matter how you shake it, with no disrespect to Judge Macy at all whatsoever, is appointed by the mayor, is signed, the contract is negotiated with the mayor, and ultimately reports to the mayor. So the people who've come up to me, who've spoke to me, and in the positions that I've been involved in, I would always like to alleviate any perceived conflicts of interest. With that being said, there has been situations where I felt it would be necessary to get a second opinion.
Isolate that
necessary. I find it necessary to get a second opinion, and if that's the case, I think the City Council should be equipped with being able to make those decisions. And you know, I take my votes very seriously. I don't just go down there and say yes or no. I go down there and I want to be as informed as possible, making the decisions that I make.
Well, that was the point that was pushed forth originally, but then what happens is, so at the time, at that council meeting, so then we had our Corporation Council, Judge Joe Macy there, give his opinion forth about how his, the actuality to his job description is to cover the whole city.
It is.
So after hearing his description, and I believe we had interesting points thrown out by fellow city councilors, it was Joe Camara, I think, I'm not sure who else was on the same side of not wanting it. They had put their opinion on there. Did that opinion change anything or resonate at all, or was it you still feel?
I still feel strongly about it, and it isn't uncommon. It isn't uncommon in other communities.
Yeah, you brought up a couple.
I did my homework, and I could have done more and more homework if I wanted to about it. But the reality is, New Bedford has a city council who pays their attorney for the city council $60,000 a year part-time. And I stated on the floor that night, my intention isn't for the city council to pay $60,000 like the school committee does for their own attorney. I strictly want to have the position that, you know, if we need an opinion, if we need to get a second opinion on something, we have that avenue to travel down.
All right. In 1 second, I'm going to take this call over. 1 second. What I wanted to say about that, though, I have an issue kind of with what happened there, what I saw. So what I'm going to ask is, and I feel like this also is applied in that situation, and I personally feel it's applied with other situations, like when there's been either Kathy Ann Viveris down there giving a certain point, and a counselor has questioned them. And I'm not necessarily throwing you into this, but I do think I've noticed you do it. But what I'm about to mention, you did do with the Judge Joe Macy thing is, people go in with a certain opinion toward one of these people sitting at the table. They go in strongly with these opinions. Then all of a sudden, once they get some kind of a feedback back, they pull back the reins a little bit, and then it turns into almost like a love fest. It's this just constant pouring out of respect, which I don't feel like it even should be looked at as a possibility of disrespect. We're talking about it's a job right now. Nothing should be personal there when you're talking about the aspect of the job. I understand politics is a personal gig, but what I see happen all the time is somebody goes down there, like we've had this happen. I've said on the show numerous times, we've had this instance with Ken Pacheco repeatedly and Kathy Ann Viveris repeatedly, and I said I noticed it with Judge Joe Macy, where someone has an opinion, they throw it at them, then once they're there at the table, they kind of retract it a little bit, or again, calm it down, cool it off. What is going on there?
Well, because you know, you go into something with maybe not as much information as you should in some cases. I can only speak for myself. Sometimes you go in and you hear an opinion, or you hear a fact that you maybe didn't consider when you were drafting your resolution or you were debating on the council floor. Okay. I always find that it's important that as a city councilor that we, you know, with the administration down, we should always have that fine line of respect for one another, no matter who it is. Right. You know, the city administrator, for instance, she works all day. She comes down and gets yelled at city council meetings for 5 or 6 hours. This is true. You know, but you know what? And I stated it when the superintendent left. I didn't agree with many things with the superintendent, with some of her things. But you know what? We always have to have that level of respect for one another because we are all in it for the same purpose.
I agree. I just feel like people shouldn't, if you have the main objective that you want to go in there with, that's why I feel like the respect issue shouldn't even be an issue. We shouldn't be having that as part of the conversation unless someone's actually going out there as a city councilor and just name calling or putting down someone's personal life. That's a different aspect. But I feel like when people just want to propose what their objection might be, they stop pulling the reins back. And it's like I said, there's like, instead of just getting the point out, there's like 5 times of, well, I appreciate this, love what you did there, you've been great at that. And it's like, okay, but let's just stay to the point you had. You had a decent point. This is what I think a lot of people out there might see. Not the majority, not the minority. Somewhere in the middle, I think people see that there's people who put out an opinion and then they stop pulling it back for the sake of respect, which I don't understand how respect gets
well,
in there.
I guess it's in everybody's approach. You know, I always try to take the sense of a situation where you try to take the good and the bad. Right. You know, I think when I just didn't approve the budget, I did give credit to the administration for their efforts because I think they need to be given admiration to some degree for their efforts in preparing the budget. But there were some factors about it that I just didn't agree with, and we move on.
All right, we're gonna take a caller. See if caller, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. I just moved into Fall River last summer from Somerset. I was wondering, I was living on Pine Street, and one of the city councils is my landlord. And I was just wondering if Councilor Ponte has any better properties, maybe around Grove Street or somewhere else, because I don't like these drug dealers and prostitutes on my front lawn.
All right, yeah, we got, okay. All right, I can get to that. All right, Jake took care. All right, so the main point I'd get with that is, and I did want to actually, I can segue that into a good question. So what he's talking about is the actual individuals who might be living on a property, but I also did want to bring up the, one of the issues right now we've had a big conversation is the conditions of properties. So obviously, in case everybody out there might not know, Councilor Cliff Ponte, your experience is in real estate. So with this being one of the main talking points, what's your opinion on a lot of these properties that are being called out for their conditions, and what, as your experience in real estate, what do you think the city, or how can the city approach this in the best way to possibly handle it? Because again, at council meetings, I feel like the discussions just goes in circles a lot.
Yeah.
So just right cut to the facts with your experience, what is the best approach to go with this?
I've maintained the position when it comes to properties that may be dilapidated or abandoned, or the grass is tall and it's not being maintained by whoever owns the property, that the city come down with a stringent policy, whereas they are fining the property until the property is cleaned up. I've often cited numerous times, whether it's in subcommittee or in full council, what other communities do. What other communities do, I'll take Chelsea, for instance. If there's a report found in Chelsea, Massachusetts, that the grass is tall, there's holes in the windows, there's possibly drug dealings going on in the backyard, it's an unsafe, uninhabitable property, what Chelsea does is they lien the property at $300 a day. $300 a day until a permit is pulled to address the issues.
What's the average response time once you start doing that?
If you own a property, we can think about it for a second. If I own a property, if you own a property, if somebody watching Necessary Media owns a property, they go and they say, well, if they get in a fine at $300 a day, they're moving it. They're going down. They're gonna fix that door. They're gonna cut that grass. Right. They're gonna do it. We really just need to be brought up to speed in terms of what other communities do, and to make it simple, because I know you don't have a lot of time. We need to follow what other communities do. I know that Judge Macy is currently working on with members of his administration and department heads to try to develop a stringent policy. Worcester. What Worcester does is Worcester has. At one time, they had a bond. So if a property is abandoned or owned by a hedge fund or an out-of-town investor or a bank or whatever the situation is, they have to pay $5,000, a $5,000 bond holding the property. And what happens is if the grass is tall, the windows are broken, there's code violations, they're going to go in there.
Broken windows?
Broken windows.
Broken windows.
They're going to go in there and they're going to take from the bond to fix the repairs.
Okay.
So I mean, communities do it differently. Fall River just needs to be brought up to speed, I think.
I'm going to agree, and I'm also going to make a great point that City Councilor Cliff Ponte just pointed out in the show, that I am tight on time. So you're the first councilor to actually do that. I've had another councilor; they go along with it. So. But you've mentioned it. I think there's one counselor in particular. I've mentioned him before. I don't know what the story is. It's a biography every time. I love it, but I don't have the time right now. Let's expand the show, everybody. But for now, I don't. I wanted to bring up one thing, another thing that it was one of the things you campaigned on. I don't know how much information you had at the time, because I think now the actualities to it might have changed. But I'd like to know where we stand, the actualities. A lot of people want their cable rate brought down. We're stuck in with Comcast right now. I know that was one of the things you were looking during campaign. You asked what people were interested in fixing in the city, and everybody's going to be looking at it like, what the heck's the deal with cable? Yeah. What did you find out?
Well, it's so funny you say that. I paid my cable bill today, and it was like $197.
Yep.
And
have you also been dealing with this nonstop disruption in service as well?
I have been, yeah.
It's a good time. You pay that big bill. And
I received my bill, it was like $197, and I said to myself, this is absolutely crazy. Now, what made me campaign on that and at least start the discussion is that I can utilize an example that happened in Warwick. In Warwick, what happened, they had one provider, and then Cox came in, and they allowed the opportunity for homeowners to compete in terms of what cable companies they want to go with. I think it was between Verizon and Cox or whatever it was. I don't exactly know the two companies, but what it did was it allowed those two companies to compete to offset some of the expenses, and what would happen is If I want to get cable in my house, I'm going to call both companies and go with the lowest one, which will, essentially bring the prices down. So it's something that I'm
capitalism? It's crazy.
It's something that I've looked at, something that I've looked into, and I look to continue to have that discussion. I believe the contract doesn't go up for another 15 to 16 months.
That's it?
Mayor Bob Carrere signed it. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was a 5 or 6 year contract of some sorts, but something that I'm going to continue to look into.
So once we're at that point, that's the bridge we got to cross. Once we get to the end of this contract, which is around, again, I think I heard it's around the 19th, 2019.
I believe that's what it is. Yeah.
All right. So around there, we cross that bridge, and we'll definitely see what's going to happen. Because right now, yeah, definitely. Okay. Another thing I want to get into. I probably have enough time for about 2 things if I can. About 3 minutes to get into this, but. The situation right now going on with trash, we have this constant, who's going to win this battle right now between either the labor union from the DCM before, or now we have the current administration went private, and there's this back and forth of what's going to happen legally. What is your opinion on that right now? Where do you stand on this? Do you feel confident that the city doesn't have to worry, which is what we've heard from, again, Corporation Counsel Judge Joe Macy has been on the floor, on the table, and has said clearly he did not see any reason to worry. We had solid ground to stand on. A couple things have happened in between there as far as the litigation-wise. Where do you stand on that as of now?
Well, first off, I believe, and I could be wrong, but my memory serves me correctly, I believe Judge Macy made the point of where we stand in terms of the contract. The city has retained outside counsel to represent them in the litigation with the State Labor Relations Board. With that being said, I don't think Judge Macy is really involved in that because we've retained outside counsel for that.
Well, I mean, this is what I mean. He gave the opinion to the city council, though. When you guys were asking him, well, not specifically you, I'm not sure, but I know, for instance, like a definite for sure was we had City Councilor Ray Mitchell constantly pressing on the fact that this isn't going to be able to work. We're going to have all these problems. And at the time, Judge Joe Macy had said, no, he didn't feel there was a need to worry. And if he's representing the city, his advisory is what we're supposed to be going by.
Right.
So that's why, again, the confidence level.
Well, look, Judge Macy has an opinion.
This is true.
I have an opinion. We all have an opinion.
This is true. This is reminiscent of City Councilor Joe Camara. Everyone's got another.
I personally feel, and I got to be careful with what I say because I am an elected official and this is involved in litigation. But
this is necessary media. You're all right.
But it's important. I think it's important that we got to be careful with how we make our decisions going forward, because there is a big what if. There's a 50-50 chance, or it could be a 75 or 25, whatever split you want to talk, that the city might not prevail in the situation. The labor union may, the city may. It all depends what happens. I was very critical during the budget negotiations that we have failed to potentially plan in the case that the city doesn't prevail and the city has to pay X amount of money to, whether it's to settle or to pay the workers who've been laid off who aren't currently working. I just made a pretty clear point that we need to make sure that we plan for that, because in Fall River, in many years, the Safer Grant, for instance, we failed to plan. So when we fail to plan, we're going to be looking at, all right, who are we going to lay off now? What firefighter, or what police officer, what teacher is going to be affected because we failed to plan? And I needed to see that in black and white. I didn't see it. So that was another reason why I was, I didn't really feel in favor of the budget. But what I feel about it is I hope that whatever happens, it's what's best for the city. But from the people that I speak to, my opinion now, and people who I respect very much, who have been a part of labor negotiations, because I haven't been, I don't think many city councilors have been either, is that there was or was not an impasse. I think that's really what it comes down to.
All right.
So we'll see what happens with it, and
right.
I hope that whatever does happen, though, Mike, is beneficial for the city, so we can really, at the end of the day, move on from this.
All right. I want to get into this to make sure I get this done, and if I have time at the end, even if it's seconds, I'll bring up something. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go into the fan favorite No Flex Zone Award of the Week.
No flex zone. No flex zone. They know better. They know better.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you are in the No Flex Zone. The No Flex Zone is a zone where you do not belong flexing. And by flexing, I mean doing anything you're not supposed to be doing in a place you're not supposed to be doing. And in this week's version of it, again, this is a very serious one to me. I just put this together right before I came to the show. If you've been paying attention nationally, we've had the Republican National Convention go on, and it had its own controversy. We just had the Democratic National Convention go on. It had its own controversy. But something I don't think many people pointed out that stuck out right away to me, because it connected to something that happened during the Democratic debates. I'm going to play this for you right now. This is a clip from last night, and we'll roll this all together. So, Jake, can you cue that up?
Her team negotiated the New START treaty with Russia to reduce nuclear weapons and reestablish inspections, and she got enough Republican support to get 2/3 of the Senate the vote necessary to ratify the treaty. She flew all night long from Cambodia to the Middle East to get a ceasefire. From Cambodia to the Middle East, Cambodia to the Middle East, Cambodia.
I was very flattered when Henry Kissinger said I ran the State Department better than anybody had run it in a long time. So I have an idea about what it's going to take to make our government work more efficiently.
In her book and in this last debate, she talked about getting the approval or the support or the mentoring of Henry Kissinger. Now, I find it rather amazing because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia, when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger.
In the spring of 1969, American B-52s had begun the secret bombing of neutral Cambodia. These top-secret military cables, obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, were part of a cover-up that was the real beginning of Watergate. The pilots were sworn not to tell even their superiors, and their logs were falsified. The official aim of the bombing was to wipe out a Viet Cong base in Cambodia, a base that existed only in the imagination of American generals. President Nixon's aim was to show the Vietnamese communists just how tough he could be, a policy he once described as the madman theory of war. The Cambodians who died were called collateral damage, and their burning villages were called friendly fire. The Pentagon had described Cambodians as a docile and passive people who cannot be relied upon to act in a positive way for the benefit of American policies. In 1970, the United States invaded Cambodia. A member of Dr. Kissinger's staff described how the invasion was launched. Nixon had been watching his favorite movie, Patton, whose war heroics seemed to fortify his toughness. Kissinger had been dining out on stories of Nixon's drinking.
Shortly before the invasion, Nixon, who was drunk, spoke to Kissinger on the phone. He slurred, "If this doesn't work, it'll be your ass, Henry." Kissinger had once described Nixon as unfit to be president. He also called him a meatball mind. Between the two of them, they began the destruction of those passive, docile people, thousands of miles away here in Cambodia. Of course, Nixon was later apprehended, not for the murder of Cambodia, but for a domestic affair called Watergate. Kissinger received the Nobel Peace Prize.
Out of the inferno of bombs came Pol Pot, a former Buddhist monk, and the Khmer Rouge, whose revolution had never enjoyed a popular base until Nixon's madman theory of war.
From Cambodia to the Middle East, Cambodia to the Middle East.
Ladies ladies and gentlemen, No Flex Zonal winner this week goes to Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders for all just saying, forget all that nonsense. Let's just all take it to the Democratic National Convention and just ride that wave out. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the show for this week. I appreciate Cliff coming out here today. Thank you very much. Everybody out there watching at home, tune in next week. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, big show. State Rep Alan Silva in one corner against the legalization of marijuana. That's going to be on the vote coming up in November. And in the other corner, we got advocate for marijuana, former Mayor Will Flanagan. Big show. Tune in.